I was 30 seconds from locking the clinic door when someone started pounding on it. Not knocking. Pounding. The kind of desperate sound that makes every instinct scream run. My hand froze on the deadbolt. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a shape. Tall. Swaying. The pounding came again. Weaker this time. Followed by a sound that stopped my breath. A groan. Raw and animal. "We're closed," I called out, hating how my voice shook. "Hospital is 15 miles north. Please." The word came muffled through the door. "They'll find me there." My medical training warred with common sense. This was rural Oregon, 10:45 on a Tuesday night, and I was alone. But that voice, the desperation in it wasn't performance. It was survival. I opened the door. The man nearly collapsed into me. I caught him barely, my 130 pounds no match for his weight. He was massive, 6'3" at least, built like he spent his life in a gym. Blood soaked through a white dress shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His face was pale beneath olive skin, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "Inside," I managed, dragging him through the doorway. "Now." He stumbled forward, one hand pressed against his left shoulder where crimson bloomed like a grotesque flower. His other hand caught the exam table, knuckles white with effort. Up close, I could see the details my panic had missed. The shirt wasn't just expensive. It was custom. The pants were tailored to perfection despite being splattered with mud and blood. Even his shoes screamed money, Italian leather destroyed by whatever hell he'd walked through to reach my door. "Sit," I ordered, already moving to the supply cabinet. "Don't pass out yet. I need information first." "Bullet," he said through gritted teeth. "Left shoulder. Through and through, I think." I froze with my hands on the antibiotic bottles. "You think?" "Hard to check when you're running." His eyes met mine for the first time. Ice blue. Startling against his dark hair and the blood. "You're a doctor?" "Veterinarian." I set supplies on the tray with hands that had steadied the moment I shifted into professional mode. "Which means you're technically my first human patient. So if you have a preference on anesthesia, now's the time to speak up." Something that might have been a laugh escaped him. "You're joking." Humor helps me not panic. I cut away his shirt with surgical scissors, revealing the wound beneath. Entry point in the front, exit in the back. Clean through the meat of his shoulder, missing bone and major vessels. Lucky. Incredibly lucky. "This is going to hurt." "Everything already hurts." I believed him. Up close, I could see other injuries. Bruising along his ribs. Scrapes on his knuckles. A cut above his eyebrow that had already stopped bleeding. This man had been through a war tonight. "What's your name?" I asked, irrigating the wound with saline. He hissed but didn't pull away. "Does it matter?" "I'm about to fish around inside your shoulder with veterinary equipment." "Yeah, it matters." "Raphael." He watched my hands with an intensity that should have been unnerving. Instead, it was oddly grounding, like he trusted me. "Just Raphael." "Valentina." "Doctor." "Valentina Cruz, but you can skip the title since I'm practicing medicine without a license right now." I injected local anesthetic around the wound. "This'll help." "A little. Tell me about the people looking for you. The less you know, the safer you are. The man bleeding all over my exam table doesn't get to make that call." I began suturing, each stitch precise despite my racing heart. "Someone shot you. Multiple someones, judging by how paranoid you are. They might come looking. I need to know what I'm dealing with." Raphael was silent for a long moment. Then, "Business associates. A disagreement that got violent. Business associates don't usually settle disagreements with bullets. Mine do." The simple honesty of it sent ice down my spine. But I didn't stop working. Couldn't. Whatever Raphael was, whoever had done this, he was still a patient. Still a person bleeding in front of me. I was halfway through the second suture when Thor started barking. My German shepherd, all 80 pounds of rescue dog muscle and loyalty, came bounding from the back room where he'd been sleeping. He skidded to a halt at the doorway, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from his chest. Raphael's reaction was instantaneous. His right hand moved toward his waistband even as his body tried to twist away from the threat. The movement tore at my sutures, fresh blood welling up. "Stop," I commanded, pressing gauze against the wound. "Thor, sit." The dog's growl cut off mid-sound. He sat, but his eyes never left Raphael. Watching, assessing, Raphael had gone completely still. His hand had fallen away from whatever weapon he'd been reaching for, but tension vibrated through every line of his body. "Your guard dog?" "My friend." I kept pressure on his shoulder. "You're going to have to breathe through this. I need to restart the suture, and it's going to hurt worse the second time." But Thor had already made his decision. The shepherd stood, shook himself once, and patted forward. He came right up to the exam table, pressed his nose against Raphael's knee, and then did something he'd never done with a stranger before. He laid down, right there, at this bleeding man's feet. I trailed off, watching my dog settle in like he'd found something worth protecting. He doesn't trust people. It took him 3 months to let me touch him after I pulled him from that fighting ring. Raphael's hand, the one that had been reaching for a weapon moments ago, slowly extended toward Thor. The dog allowed it. Let this stranger scratch behind his ears, with fingers that trembled slightly. Smart dog. Terrible judge of character, apparently. That almost laugh again. Probably. I finished the suturing in silence. 23 stitches total. Not my finest work, but it would hold. I bandaged the wound, my fingers brushing against skin that was warmer than it should be. Fever, probably. Shock, definitely. "You need antibiotics," I said, already calculating what I had in stock. "And rest, and probably a real hospital. But I'm guessing that's not happening. Can't." He tried to stand, swayed dangerously. I caught him, and for a moment we were too close. Close enough that I could smell him beneath the copper of blood. Cedar and something darker. Expensive cologne and danger mixed into something that made my pulse jump. "You can't go anywhere," I said, stepping back quickly. "It's almost 11. Where exactly are you planning to go?" Raphael looked toward the front windows. Beyond them, the Oregon night was complete. No streetlights this far from town. Just darkness and the wind moving through the pines. Away from here. Before they come looking. If they come looking, they'll find an empty clinic and a lot of questions. "If you stay, I can claim your..." I thought fast. "My cousin, visiting from out of state. Got injured in a hiking accident. You'd lie for me?" "I'd lie to keep armed men from shooting up my clinic." I pointed toward the door that led to my small apartment attached to the building. "There's a couch. 7 hours until my assistant gets here at 6. That gives you time to rest and disappear before anyone asks questions." He studied me with those unsettling pale eyes. "Why?" "Because my dog likes you. And because whatever you are, whoever's after you, right now, you're just a patient who needs help." I crossed to the medicine cabinet, pulling out antibiotic tablets and pain medication. "Take these, all of them. And if you're not gone by morning, we're going to have a very different conversation." Raphael took the pills, swallowed them dry. "Thank you, Dr. Cruz. Don't thank me until you survive." I held open the door to my apartment. "And don't bleed on my couch. Thor might like you, but I don't have the budget for new furniture." I left him there, walked back to my bedroom and closed the door, leaning against it as my knees finally went weak. My hands were steady in crisis, but now they shook. I'd just sutured a gunshot wound with veterinary supplies, harbored someone who was clearly running from something violent, made myself an accessory to God knows what. Through the thin walls, I heard Raphael moving around. Then his voice, low and urgent, speaking into a phone I hadn't seen him pull out. "Franco, it's me. They found me on Highway 26. Had to bail near Forest Grove. I'm secure for now, but I need a cleanup crew and protective detail. There's a civilian involved. A veterinarian. She helped me." A pause. My heart hammered against my ribs. "No, she doesn't know anything. Didn't ask the right questions. But they might have seen me come here." Another pause. "Do whatever you need to do to keep her safe. She's not part of this." The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I moved to my window, parted the curtain just enough to see outside. My clinic sat on a rural road, surrounded by pine trees and darkness. Nothing moved. Then I saw it. A black SUV, driving slowly past with its headlights off. It paused at the end of my driveway for a long moment before continuing down the road and disappearing into the night. I let the curtain fall closed and sat on my bed, trying to slow my breathing. Thor patted in, pushed his head against my knee. I buried my fingers in his fur, seeking the comfort of something familiar, something that made sense. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, a stranger bled on my couch. And somewhere in the darkness, people with guns were looking for him. I had 7 hours to figure out what came next. 7 hours to decide if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life or somehow stumbled into saving it. My alarm never went off. Didn't need to. The smell of coffee pulled me from a sleep so thin it barely qualified as rest. I'd spent most of the night listening for sounds from the living room. Footsteps. Doors opening. The telltale click of someone leaving. Instead, I'd heard nothing, which somehow felt worse. I checked my phone. 5:32. Camilla would be here in less than 30 minutes, expecting a normal Wednesday. Expecting me to have the coffee ready, not some bleeding stranger playing barista in my apartment. I threw on yesterday's jeans and a clean shirt, didn't bother with my hair beyond shoving it into a ponytail. When I opened my bedroom door, Raphael was standing at my kitchen counter, awake, dressed in a clean t-shirt from my donation bin, one that stretched tight across shoulders too broad for my usual clientele. His injured arm hung carefully at his side, but he moved with surprising ease for someone who'd been shot 12 hours ago. "You should still be unconscious," I said. He turned, coffee pot in his good hand. Couldn't sleep. Guilt or pain? Both. He poured 2 mugs without asking. I made extra. Figured you'd need it. The domesticity of it was absurd. A stranger, in my kitchen, making coffee like he belonged here. I should have been calling the police, should have been demanding answers. Instead, I accepted the mug he held out, our fingers brushing in the exchange. His skin was still too warm. Fever hadn't broken. "You need to take more antibiotics," I said. "Already did. 3 a.m. And the pain medication?" "Skipped it. Need to stay alert." He leaned against the counter, studying me with those unsettling pale eyes. "You didn't sleep either. Hard to sleep when there's a strange man bleeding on my couch." "I didn't bleed on it. You gave me very specific instructions." Almost humor flickered between us. Dangerous. I couldn't afford to find him charming. Couldn't afford to notice the way his jaw tensed when he moved wrong, or how his fingers tightened on the mug when footsteps sounded outside. "That's Camilla," I said quickly, moving toward the clinic entrance. "My assistant. She arrives early, feeds the overnight patients before we open. What are you going to tell her?" "The truth." I paused at the door. "That you're someone passing through who needed help." Nothing more. But Camilla was already inside, her key turning in the lock I'd forgotten to reset. She came through carrying her usual oversized bag, already chattering about the weather, about traffic, about her boyfriend's latest drama. Then she saw Raphael and stopped mid-sentence. "Val." Her eyes went wide. "You have a man here." "Cousin," I said immediately, the lie smooth despite never having practiced it. "From Brazil. Visiting unexpectedly. This is Raphael." "Rafa, this is Camila. She works with me." Raphael stepped forward, extending his good hand. When he spoke, his accent thickened, Portuguese inflection coloring English words. "Nice to meet. Valentina is always talking of you." I'd never told him about Camila, never mentioned Brazil, but he played the part perfectly, even managing a somewhat shy smile that transformed his face into something less predatory. Camilla relaxed fractionally. "Your cousin is hot," she whispered to me in a voice not quite low enough. Then louder. "What happened to your arm?" "Hiking accident," Raphael said before I could answer. "Very stupid. Valentina fixed me up." "In the middle of the night?" "He showed up at midnight," I said, shooting Raphael a look that promised consequences later. Couldn't exactly turn him away bleeding. "But he's fine now. He'll be gone before we open." "I will," Raphael agreed, though something in his eyes suggested otherwise. Camila looked between us, clearly suspicious but too polite to push. "Okay. Well, I'll go check on the overnight boarding. That beagle probably ate his bedding again." The moment she disappeared into the back, I rounded on Raphael. Brazil? You said cousin. I gave you credibility. He set down his mug, and his expression shifted. All pretense of casual visiting relative vanished. We have a problem. We don't have anything. You have a problem. The clinic's back door opened before he could respond. I hadn't even heard a car pull up. A man entered, moving with the same controlled precision as Raphael. Older, maybe 40, with silver threading through dark hair. He wore a black suit despite the early hour, and his eyes swept the space like he was cataloging exits. Boss, he said quietly. Boss. The word dropped between us like a stone. Raphael's jaw tightened. Franco. I said discreet. Came through the service road. No one saw. Franco's gaze landed on me, assessing. Dr. Cruz. You know my name. I know everything relevant. He pulled out a phone, showed Raphael something on the screen. They spoke in low voices, Italian maybe, urgent and quick. I caught maybe 3 words. None of them comforting. English, I demanded. You're in my clinic. I deserve to know what's happening. Raphael looked at me, and for the first time I saw something like regret in those ice-blue eyes. Last night wasn't random. It was an ambush. Organized, professional. By who? Family Versiani, rival organization. We've been at war for 3 weeks. He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. They killed 3 of my men. Would have killed me if I hadn't gotten lucky. The clinical part of my brain noted the phrasing. Organization, family, war. The rest of me felt cold. You're mafia. I'm a businessman with violent enemies. That's not a denial. No, Raphael said quietly. It's not. I should have been terrified. Should have been ordering them out, calling the police, burning everything he'd touched. Instead, I felt something closer to fury. You brought this to my door. I had nowhere else to go. And now? What happens now? I gestured to Franco. He shows up in the middle of the night, calls you boss, and I'm supposed to just what? Pretend I didn't notice? Franco interrupted. We have a bigger issue. Dr. Cruz needs to see this. He pulled up a photo on his phone. A man's body, face destroyed by violence I didn't want to examine too closely. In his jacket pocket, clearly visible, was one of my business cards. Where did you get this? My voice came out steadier than I felt. One of the men from last night. Versiani's crew. Franco swiped to another photo. This one showed my clinic from the outside, taken from a car. They know Raphael came here. They'll come looking. As if summoned, headlights swept across the front windows. A vehicle pulled up outside. Black SUV with tinted windows. It stopped directly in front of the clinic entrance and sat there. Engine running. Raphael moved faster than someone injured should be able to. He had me pressed against the wall behind the reception desk, his body blocking mine, before I could process the motion. Franco disappeared toward the back, one hand inside his jacket. Stay quiet. Raphael breathed against my ear. Don't move. 2 men got out of the SUV. Through the window blinds, I could see them approaching. One knocked. Heavy. Demanding. We're not open, I called out, proud of how normal I sounded. We're looking for someone. Thick accent. Eastern European. Man injured in accident last night. Heard there was clinic here. Raphael's hand found mine in the dark space behind the desk. His fingers laced through mine. Squeeze once. Warning or reassurance? I couldn't tell. I stood, smoothing my shirt, and walked to the door. Didn't open it. This is a veterinary clinic. I don't treat people. Maybe you made exception? The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. For friend? I don't have friends who get shot. I let irritation color my voice. Real irritation at being pulled into this nightmare. Try the emergency room in Forest Grove. They're used to patching up idiots. The men exchanged glances. The second one, shorter but broader, pulled out a phone, showed me a photo. Raphael. From before. Uninjured. Wearing a tuxedo at some formal event, looking like he owned the world. You see this man? No. The lie came easier the second time. But if I do, should I be calling someone? If you see, you call this number. He handed me a business card. Plain white, just a phone number in black print. Important you call right away. Sure. I pocketed the card. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual patients waiting. They left, but not before looking hard at the clinic, at my car parked beside it, at the windows, where I prayed Camilla had stayed hidden in the back with the animals. The SUV pulled away slowly, deliberately, making sure I watched them go. I waited until the taillights disappeared before moving. My legs felt unsteady. Raphael emerged from behind the desk, and up close I could see the tension vibrating through him. He'd been ready to fight, to kill, maybe, if they'd come inside. They'll be back, he said. Then you need to leave. Now. Can't. He glanced at Franco, who'd reappeared from wherever he'd been lurking. They saw the clinic, saw you. If I disappear now, they'll assume you helped me. They'll come back to make you tell them where I went. So what are you suggesting? That I what? Harbor a fugitive indefinitely? 48 hours. You come with me. Let my people protect both locations. After that, Verciani will have bigger problems than one doctor. I have a business, patients, a life. Franco spoke up. Doctor. Cruz, with respect, they found your business card on a dead man. Whether you helped the boss or not, you're involved now. The unfairness of it hit me like a physical blow. I'd done nothing wrong, saved a life. And now I was caught in someone else's war because I'd made the mistake of being human. 2 days, Raphael said. His voice had softened. 48 hours. Then I'll make sure they understand you were never part of this. You'll be safe. And if I refuse? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. We both knew I didn't really have a choice. Not anymore. Not since I'd opened my door to a bleeding stranger and decided his life mattered more than my safety. I looked at my clinic, at the exam table where I'd sutured him, at Thor, who'd appeared from my apartment, and now sat calmly at Raphael's feet, like he'd chosen sides. 48 hours, I said finally. Not 1 minute more. 3 black SUVs idled in the service road behind my clinic. Identical. Tinted windows. The kind of vehicles that screamed money and menace in equal measure. Franco loaded my hastily packed duffel into the middle car while I stood there trying to convince myself this was temporary. 48 hours. Then my life would return to normal. Except nothing felt normal anymore. Thor jumped into the back seat before I could stop him, settling in like he'd been planning this road trip for weeks. Raphael appeared at my elbow, moving quieter than someone his size should. He can stay here if you prefer. Franco's men will watch the clinic. He goes where I go. I climbed in after my dog, and Raphael slid in beside me. Too close. The vehicle's leather interior suddenly felt smaller than my entire clinic. Franco took the driver's seat. Through the rearview mirror, I caught him studying me. Assessing. Calculating. The engine purred to life, and we pulled onto the main road with the other 2 SUVs falling into formation. One ahead, one behind. A convoy designed to protect or imprison. I wasn't sure which. Where exactly are we going? I asked. My property. 2 hours north. Raphael's injured arm rested carefully against his side. The fever still lingered in his skin. But he sat straight. Alert. Cascade Mountains. Isolated. Defensible. Defensible? You mean like a fortress? I mean safe. His eyes met mine. For both of us. The landscape shifted as we drove. Forest grove gave way to deeper wilderness. Towns becoming sparse. Roads narrowing. Raphael made calls in Italian, his voice low and controlled. But I caught the tension underneath. Whatever war he was fighting, it hadn't ended with last night's ambush. When he finally put the phone away, silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable exactly, but loaded. Thor's head rested on my lap, grounding me when nothing else did. Tell me about Verciani, I said finally. Raphael turned toward me, and for a moment I thought he'd refuse. Then he sighed. Sergio Verciani, 42, runs operations from Seattle to Sacramento. Or he did, until he decided Portland was worth starting a war over. And you run Portland? My family has controlled the territory for 60 years, since my grandfather immigrated from Naples. He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing inheritance of a business, which I supposed it was, just not a legal one. The Luminari family. We have rules, standards. What kind of standards does the Mafia have? Something dark flickered across his face. We don't traffic humans. We don't touch children. We don't deal heavy drugs or weapons to terrorists. My grandfather believed power came with responsibility. Not everyone in our world agrees. Vertsiani doesn't agree. Vertsiani allied himself with the Solntsevskaya Bratva, Russian organization with no code beyond profit. Raphael's jaw tightened. They want Portland because it's a clean port city, perfect for moving product and people. I refused to hand over territory, so they decided to take it. The clinical part of my brain noted his phrasing. Clean, product, people. Euphemisms for crimes I didn't want to examine too closely. How long have you been fighting? 3 weeks since the first attack. But tensions have been building for months. He looked out the window at passing trees. I knew it was coming, just not when. And the 3 men who died? Good men, loyal. His voice went flat. 2 had families. Franco is handling arrangements. I thought about the life I'd pulled him back from. Thought about the ripples that single decision had created. Do you regret it? This life? Raphael was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. I regret what it costs. But I was 12 when my mother died. Cancer. My father had already abandoned us years before. My grandfather raised me, taught me everything. When he passed, I inherited responsibility for 200 families who depend on us for work, for protection, for justice the law won't provide. That's one way to frame it. It's the truth, not all of it, but not a lie either. He shifted to face me fully. I won't pretend I'm a good man, Valentina, but I'm not the worst one in this fight. The way he said my name, careful and deliberate, made something flutter in my chest. Dangerous. I couldn't afford to see him as anything other than what he was. A criminal who dragged me into his war. But Thor trusted him, and animals knew things people missed. Tell me about your clinic, Raphael said, changing the subject. How long have you been there? 5 years. Bought the building with money I'd saved working at a corporate practice in Portland. I scratched Thor's ears. Hated it. Too many people treating animals like accessories. Out here, people actually care. They bring me barn cats with broken legs and cry when their horses get colic. You love it. It's mine. I built it from nothing. I met his eyes. Like you with your family business, I suppose. Just with fewer bullets. That almost smile appeared. The one that softened his predator's face into something almost human. Significantly fewer bullets. Franco's voice interrupted from the front. Boss. Approaching the turnoff. The road ahead split. One direction continuing north, the other branching onto what looked like a private drive. No sign. No indication of where it led. Franco took the unmarked path, and the forest closed in around us. The road climbed, winding up into the mountains. 10 minutes later, gates appeared. Massive wrought iron between stone pillars, topped with cameras I could see, and probably a dozen I couldn't. They swung open silently as we approached, and my breath caught. The property beyond was stunning. The main house sat on a plateau overlooking a valley, all glass and stone and modern lines that somehow fit the wilderness setting. Security was everywhere but subtle. Men in dark suits positioned at strategic points. More cameras. Probably sensors I couldn't even identify. Welcome to my home, Raphael said quietly. We stopped in a circular drive. Franco opened my door, and I stepped out into mountain air that smelled like pine and snow. Thor bounded out after me, immediately investigating this new territory. Then I saw her. A woman stood on the front steps, arms crossed, dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. Late 20s, maybe 30. She wore tailored slacks and a silk blouse that screamed expensive taste. Her eyes were the same ice blue as Raphael's. Rafa, she said as he climbed out. Her voice carried authority despite being pitched low. You brought a civilian here. Lucia. Raphael moved to her, and they embraced briefly, carefully, mindful of his injury. This is Dr. Valentina Cruz. She saved my life, and now she's in danger because of it. Lucia's gaze swept over me. Clinical. Assessing. I'd seen that look before in surgery residents. Deciding if I was competent or an idiot. The veterinarian. Yes. You're aware of what my brother does? As of about 7 hours ago, yes. Something that might have been respect flickered in her expression. At least she's honest. Come inside. We need to discuss security protocols. The interior matched the exterior. Sleek, modern, expensive, but not ostentatious. Original art on the walls, furniture that probably cost more than my car, but everything chosen with purpose rather than show. Lucia led us to a dining room where a table was already set. I assumed you'd be hungry, she said. Chef prepared something simple. Simple turned out to be pasta carbonara that smelled like heaven and looked professionally plated. 2 other men joined us. Older, battle-hardened, wearing the same dark suits and watchful expressions. Raphael introduced them as captains in his organization, Roberto and Adriano. They nodded acknowledgement but didn't speak. The meal was the most surreal experience of my life. Sitting at a table with Mafia leadership, discussing security rotations and territory disputes like it was corporate strategy. Lucia was clearly more than Raphael's sister. She was his advisor, possibly his legal counsel, and definitely someone who commanded respect in her own right. Dr. Cruz, she said, turning to me halfway through the meal. Can you shoot? I nearly choked on my pasta. What? A gun. Can you shoot one? I'm a veterinarian, not a mercenary. That's not an answer. No, I cannot shoot a gun. I set down my fork. And I don't intend to learn in the next 48 hours. Lucia looked at Raphael, who shrugged slightly. She has spirit. I'll give her that. Spirit won't stop Verciani's men if they get through perimeter security. They won't get through. Raphael's voice carried absolute certainty. I've doubled the guard, installed new sensor grids. Anyone approaches, we'll know before they're within a mile. After dinner, Raphael showed me to a guest suite on the 2nd floor. Calling it a room was like calling the Grand Canyon a ditch. It had a sitting area, a bathroom larger than my entire clinic apartment, and a bed that could sleep 4 people comfortably. There's clothes in the closet, he said from the doorway. Probably not your size exactly, but close enough. Lucia ordered them when Franco called ahead. This is too much. It's what I have available. He leaned against the door frame, and the movement made him wince. The adrenaline that had carried him through the day was wearing off. I crossed to him before thinking better of it, fingers going to his injured shoulder on instinct. You're pushing yourself too hard. The wound needs rest. I'll rest when this is over. You'll rest now. I guided him to sit on the edge of the bed, pulling back his shirt to check the bandaging. Some bleeding had seeped through. Not terrible, but not good either. Stay here. I need to get supplies. When I returned from the bathroom with first aid materials I'd found under the sink, he was still sitting there, waiting, trusting. I changed his bandages carefully, my fingers brushing against skin that was too warm, too alive. This close, I could see the faint lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the way his pulse jumped at his throat. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything. I know you didn't ask for any of this. No, I didn't. I taped the last edge of the bandage. But I'm here now, might as well see it through. Our eyes met, held. For a moment, neither of us moved. The space between us felt electric, dangerous, impossible to navigate. Then Thor barked from somewhere in the suite, breaking the spell. Raphael stood smoothly. Get some rest. Tomorrow we plan how to end this. He was almost to the door when I spoke. Raphael? He turned back. You can call me Valentina. You've bled on me. Seems like we're past formalities. That smile again. The real one. Valentina. Sleep well. After he left, I stood at the window looking out over the valley. Lights from the main house reflected on glass. And beyond that, darkness stretched for miles. I was in a Mafia Boss's home, under guard, hiding from men who wanted to kill me for helping someone I barely knew. 48 hours. That's what he'd promised. 2 days, and this nightmare would end. Except deep down, I already knew nothing would be that simple. Sunlight woke me before any alarm could. It poured through floor-to-ceiling windows I'd forgotten to cover, turning the guest suite gold. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed back. Mafia safe house, 48 hours. Men with guns who wanted me dead for helping someone I barely knew. I pulled on jeans and the softest sweater I'd ever touched. courtesy of Lucia's shopping, and followed the smell of coffee downstairs. The house was quieter than I expected. No security visible, though I knew they were there. Watching. Always watching. I found Raphael in the back garden, moving through what looked like Tai Chi. Slow, controlled movements that should have been impossible with a bullet wound barely 36 hours old. He'd shed his shirt despite the mountain chill, and I could see the fresh bandaging stark white against olive skin. "You're supposed to be resting," I called out. He turned, not startled. He'd known I was there. "This is resting, compared to what I usually do. You usually get shot? More often than I'd like." He walked toward me, and I noticed the slight hitch in his stride. The movement wasn't as effortless as he wanted me to believe. "Coffee's inside. I made extra." "You're very domestic for a crime lord. My grandmother would haunt me if I couldn't take care of basic needs." He held the door open, and I caught the scent of him beneath the mountain air. Cedar, and something darker that made my pulse jump. She believed helpless men were useless men. Inside, he'd laid out breakfast. Nothing elaborate, just eggs scrambled perfectly, toast, fresh fruit. But he'd done it himself, and something about that felt more intimate than the expensive guest suite or designer clothes. "Sit," he said. "We have time before the others wake." I took the coffee he offered, settled at the island counter. "Tell me about your grandmother." Raphael cracked eggs into a pan with one hand, his injured arm hanging carefully. "Nonna Giulia. She came from Naples at 16, married my grandfather at 18, and spent 60 years keeping him alive through 3 wars and more assassination attempts than anyone counted." He smiled, and it transformed his face. "She taught me to cook, because she said any man who needed a woman to survive wasn't worth keeping alive." Sounds formidable. Terrifying. And the only person my grandfather feared. He plated eggs, slid them in front of me. She made him promise that if anything happened to him, I'd be raised with options. Education. Skills beyond violence. A choice. I ate, surprised by how good the eggs were. How normal this felt. "But you chose this anyway." "I chose responsibility. When my mother died, I was 12. My grandfather was already old, tired. He'd been planning to retire, hand the family business to his brother. But my uncle was ambitious in the wrong ways. Would have driven us into the ground within a year." Raphael leaned against the counter, coffee cup warming his good hand. "So I stepped up, learned fast, made myself indispensable. By the time I was 22, I'd earned the right to lead. That's young. Too young. But better me than someone who'd have gotten all our people killed." He met my eyes. "What about you? How does a woman end up running a veterinary clinic in the middle of nowhere?" I set down my fork, surprised he'd asked. Surprised I wanted to answer. My parents were immigrants. Brazil to Oregon when I was 4. They worked 3 jobs between them to put me through school. Died in a car accident my junior year of college. Drunk driver. The words came easier than they should have. I finished my degree on scholarships and spite. Worked at a corporate practice in Portland for 2 years, saved every penny and bought that clinic the day it went up for sale. And you've been there 5 years. You investigated me. Franco did. After I woke up on your exam table. No apology in his voice. I needed to know who'd saved me. If you were a plant, a setup, or just incredibly unlucky. And what did you decide? That you're genuine, stubborn, and that your parents would be proud of what you've built. The simple honesty of it hit harder than any pretty lie. I looked away, swallowing against unexpected emotion. Don't do that. Do what? Be human. It's easier when you're just the dangerous criminal who dragged me into his war. Raphael moved closer, and the air between us changed. Charged. Dangerous. I'm both, Valentina. I won't apologize for either. The door burst open before I could respond. Franco moving fast, phone in hand. His expression was grim. Boss, we have confirmation. It was Giovanni. Raphael's transformation was instantaneous. The gentleman who'd made me breakfast vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. You're certain? Found the transfer. 200,000 from a shell account traced back to Verciani. Giovanni's been feeding them information for 6 weeks, including your route on Highway 26. Every muscle in Raphael's body had gone rigid. Where is he? Safe house in Eugene. Thinks he's protected. Franco's voice carried contempt. Wants to negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. Raphael's voice was empty of emotion, flat, final. Bring him here. Tonight. Boss. Did I stutter? Franco left without another word. I stood slowly, watching Raphael pace the kitchen like a caged predator. You're going to kill him. Yes. No hesitation. No justification. Just fact. He's family. He's a traitor who sold out his own people for money. Raphael's eyes met mine, and they were ice. 3 men died because of him. Good men with wives and children. And he would have killed you too, if those men had found me at your clinic. I'm not defending him. I moved carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. But I need you to understand something. I've spent my life saving things, healing them. And you're asking me to stand here while you plan murder. I'm not asking you anything. This is my world, Valentina. My rules. Giovanni knew the consequences when he betrayed us. So what am I supposed to do? Pretend I don't know? Look the other way while you... Yes. He closed the distance between us, and his intensity made me step back until I hit the counter. Because this is the reality. The men who shot me aren't going to therapy and rehabilitation. Versiani isn't going to be arrested and tried in court. This is how justice works in my world, and I won't lie to make you comfortable. We stood there, too close, breathing hard. The man who'd made me eggs and shared stories about his grandmother was gone. In his place stood the boss, the killer, the thing everyone else feared. I need to go to the clinic, I said finally. Check on my patients. Make sure Camilla can handle things for another day. Absolutely not. Excuse me. It's not safe. They know where you work. I'm not asking permission, Raphael. I pushed past him, anger overriding caution. You don't control me. He caught my wrist, not rough but firm enough to stop me. This isn't about control. It's about keeping you alive. Then send guards. Send Franco. Send your whole damn army if it makes you feel better. I jerked free. But I'm going. I have responsibilities that existed before you crashed into my life. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. 3 men, armed. You don't leave their sight. Fine. And if anything feels wrong, you leave immediately. Fine. Valentina. I turned back, and whatever he saw in my face made him stop. I'm helping you. I'm here in your house, playing along with witness protection or whatever this is. But I'm not your possession. We clear? A long moment passed. Then, incredibly, he smiled. That real smile that transformed his predator's face into something almost gentle. Clear. 2 hours later, I was back at my clinic with 3 men in suits watching my every move. Camilla's eyes went wide when she saw them positioned at the door, by the windows, like presidential security. Val, what the hell? Long story. How are the patients? Fine. Mrs. Patterson's cat is recovering well from the tooth extraction. The Gonzalez's dog still has that ear infection, but the antibiotics are helping. She lowered her voice. Are you in some kind of trouble? I'm helping someone who is. It's temporary. Gabi showed up at lunch, bringing sandwiches and questions I couldn't answer. She kept glancing at the guards, then at me, clearly putting together a picture I didn't want her to see. Val, if you need help, I'm fine, really. Just a weird situation that'll be over in a day. But leaving was harder than arriving. Franco drove, with 2 other SUVs flanking us. The road back to Raphael's property wound through dense forest, and halfway there, Franco's phone buzzed. We have a tail, he said quietly. Black sedan, 2 cars back. My heart hammered against my ribs. Through the rear window, I could just make out the vehicle. Close enough to be deliberate, too far to identify faces. Vertiani? I managed. Probably. Franco's voice was calm, but his hands tightened on the wheel. Hold on. The world exploded into chaos. Franco accelerated, the other SUVs moving to block the sedan. Gunfire cracked through the afternoon, spiderwebbing the rear window. I screamed, ducking instinctively. And then Raphael was there. He'd been in the lead vehicle, but somehow he was pulling open my door, dragging me down against the seat, his body covering mine completely. Stay down, he commanded, and the cold emptiness from this morning was gone. His voice shook with something raw and desperate. "Don't move. Don't look up." More gunfire. The SUV swerved violently, throwing us against the door. Raphael's weight pressed me into leather seats, his breath hot against my ear, every line of his body tense with readiness to take bullets meant for me. Then silence. Except for my ragged breathing and the hammer of my pulse. "Clear," Franco called from the front. Raphael lifted his head slowly, scanning before letting me up. His hands moved over me, checking for injuries with clinical precision. "Are you hurt?" "No, I don't think so." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Are you?" "I'm fine," but I could see fresh blood on his bandage. The violent movement had torn something. He saw me looking and smiled grimly. "Worth it." We made it back to the property without further incident. Raphael's men had disabled the pursuing vehicle, captured one of the occupants. Information was being extracted even as we pulled through the gates. I was shaking by the time we reached the house. Delayed reaction, adrenaline crash, whatever clinical term I wanted to apply. Raphael guided me inside, his hand steady at the small of my back. "Drink this." He pressed whiskey into my hands. "It'll help." I drank, coughed, drank again. The burn helped, grounded me. "This is insane." "I know. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing and just—" I broke off, not sure what I was asking for. But Raphael seemed to understand. He pulled me against him, careful of his injury, and just held me. Let me breathe. Let me shake. His heart beat steady under my ear. And slowly, impossibly, I calmed. "Thank you," I whispered, "for covering me. Always." He said it simply, like stating fact. "As long as you're here, I'll keep you safe." I lifted my head, and our faces were too close. His eyes dropped to my mouth, darkened. The space between us felt electric, inevitable. When he kissed me, it wasn't gentle. It was desperate and fierce, and tasted like danger, and promises neither of us should make. I kissed him back, fingers tangling in his hair. All my better judgment drowning in the feel of him. His mouth moved against mine like he was claiming something, proving something, and I let him. Then he pulled back, breathing hard. "Not like this." "What?" "Not because someone shot at you. Not because you're scared and I'm convenient." His thumb traced my bottom lip, and the gentleness of it nearly undid me. "When I kiss you again, Valentina, I want it to be because you choose it. Not adrenaline, not fear. Choice." I stared at him, shocked by the restraint, the respect. "You're serious?" "Completely." He stepped back, putting safe distance between us. "You should rest. Tomorrow, we end this." He left me there, heart racing, lips still burning from his kiss, and I realized with terrifying clarity that I wasn't afraid of Raphael Luminari. I was afraid of how much I wanted to choose him. I woke to silence so complete it felt unnatural. No traffic, no distant sirens, just wind through pine trees and the occasional call of a hawk circling somewhere above the valley. The guest suite still felt surreal in morning light, too luxurious, too removed from my actual life happening somewhere down the mountain. A soft knock came before I could talk myself into going back to sleep. "Come in." Lucia entered carrying a tray. Coffee, pastries, fruit arranged like art. She set it on the sitting area table without preamble. "Raphael is in meetings until noon. Thought you might want breakfast." "You didn't have to do that." "I know." She settled into the chair across from me, studying me with those same ice-blue eyes her brother had. "But we need to talk. Woman to woman." I pulled a sweater over my sleep shirt, suddenly feeling exposed under her scrutiny. "About my brother's intentions. And yours." "I don't have intentions. I'm here because men with guns are hunting me for saving Raphael's life. That's circumstances, not intentions." Lucia poured coffee with practiced ease. "You could have demanded witness protection. Federal marshals. Instead, you agreed to come here, to his home. Why?" I thought about lying, decided against it, because Thor trusted him, and because running away felt like letting them win. Something flickered in her expression. Approval, maybe. "Raphael is different with you. More human. I haven't seen him laugh genuinely in years. Not since before he took over the family. That sounds like a warning. It's an observation. She leaned forward slightly. Men like my brother don't fall often, but when they do, they fall completely. It consumes them, makes them vulnerable in ways that get people killed in our world. The weight of her words settled between us. You're asking if I'm worth the risk. I'm asking if you understand what being with him means. Really means. Not the romance novel version. The reality of looking over your shoulder forever. Of never knowing if today's goodbye might be permanent. Of raising children who'll inherit enemies before they inherit anything else. Children. The word hit harder than it should have. We kissed once. You're jumping pretty far ahead. Am I? Lucia stood, smoothing her perfectly tailored pants. I watched him cover your body with his own during that ambush yesterday. He would have died for you without hesitation. That's not nothing, Valentina. That's everything. She left before I could respond, and I sat there with expensive coffee going cold, trying to process. I'd known Raphael 3 days. 72 hours of chaos and blood and impossible choices. How could that be enough time for everything Lucia was implying? I dressed in jeans and another borrowed sweater. This one charcoal gray and softer than clouds. Found my way downstairs, following the sound of voices. Raphael's study door stood half open, and I caught glimpses of him through the gap, standing at a massive desk, Franco beside him, both studying documents spread across dark wood. He looked up as I passed, our eyes meeting through the opening. Something shifted in his expression, softened. He said something to Franco, then appeared in the doorway. You're awake. Lucia brought breakfast, and warnings about your intentions. That almost smile appeared. My sister is protective. She said you're different with me. I am. No hesitation, no deflection. Just honesty that made my pulse jump. Come with me. I want to show you something. He led me through the house to a room I hadn't seen. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with volumes that looked actually read, rather than decoratively arranged. A leather couch faced a stone fireplace where embers still glowed from last night's fire. Original artwork hung between shelves. Nothing I recognized, but everything chosen with careful taste. This is my favorite room, Raphael said quietly. Where I come when the rest of the world gets too loud. I moved along the shelves, reading titles. Philosophy, history, classic literature in multiple languages. You actually read all these? Most. Some multiple times. He pulled a worn volume from a middle shelf. Dostoevsky. My grandfather gave me this when I was 15. Said if I was going to run a criminal empire, I should at least understand the human soul. Did it work? I'm still trying to figure that out. He replaced the book carefully. What do you read? Medical journals mostly. Veterinary studies. Nothing this intellectual. That's still intellectual. Just practical. He gestured to the couch. Sit. Please. I settled into leather that molded perfectly to my body, and Raphael sat beside me. Close, but not touching. The fire crackled, and outside the windows, mountains stretched toward a sky so blue it hurt. Tell me something true, he said. Something you don't tell people. The request caught me off guard. What? We're strangers who've seen each other bleed. Seems like we should know more than surface details. His eyes held mine. Something real. I'll trade you. I thought about deflecting, then decided Lucia was right. If this was happening, whatever this was, it deserved honesty. I'm lonely. Have been for years. I threw myself into building the clinic because it was easier than admitting I'd constructed a life with no one in it except animals who can't leave. Raphael's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes deepened. My turn? Fair's fair. I'm exhausted. Not physically. In my soul. I've been running the family for 12 years, and every day I wonder if my grandfather would be proud or horrified by what I've become. He looked at the fire. Sometimes I think about walking away, giving it all to Lucia, who's smarter and better at the politics anyway. Just disappearing somewhere no one knows my name. Why don't you? Because 200 families depend on us for livelihood and protection. Because our code keeps worse people from taking over. Because responsibility doesn't end just because you're tired. He turned back to me. Until 3 days ago, I thought that was enough. that duty and honor and tradition were sufficient reasons to keep going. And now? Now I've met someone who makes me want to be selfish, who makes me imagine a different life. His fingers found mine, lacing together with devastating gentleness. That terrifies me more than Versiani ever could. We sat like that for a long time, just breathing, just being. The weight of everything unsaid hanging between us like a promise we hadn't made yet. Lunch came and went. Raphael showed me the rest of the property, walking through gardens maintained despite the season, pointing out security features hidden in landscaping. We talked about everything and nothing: favorite foods, worst injuries, embarrassing childhood stories. He told me about learning to cook from his grandmother. I told him about the time I accidentally sedated myself trying to tranquilize an aggressive dog. By evening, something had shifted between us. The sharp edges had softened into something easier, more real. Dinner appeared on the terrace, table set for two overlooking the valley as sunset painted everything gold and crimson. Raphael pulled out my chair himself, and I noticed his shoulder moved easier. The fever had finally broken completely. "You're healing," I observed. "Good doctor." He poured wine, something red that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. "To skilled veterinarians who tolerate difficult patients. To difficult patients who don't die on my exam table." We touched glasses, and the sound seemed to resonate through the evening air. Dinner was perfect, some kind of risotto I couldn't identify but would happily eat forever, followed by tiramisu that tasted like heaven. "I planned this," Raphael admitted over dessert. "The dinner, the timing. Wanted one evening where we weren't running or hiding or talking about war. Just two people having dinner? Just two people." His eyes held mine across the candlelight. "Is that okay?" Instead of answering, I stood and moved around the table. He watched me approach, something dark and hungry flickering in his expression. When I was close enough to touch, he pulled me down onto his lap. Careful and deliberate. "Valentina." He breathed against my ear. "Tell me to stop if you don't want this." But I did want it. Wanted him with an intensity that should have scared me. So instead of speaking, I kissed him. This wasn't like yesterday. This was choice, conscious and clear. His mouth moved against mine like he was memorizing the taste, the texture, every small sound I made. My fingers tangled in his hair, and he groaned low in his throat. "Inside," he managed between kisses. "Not here. Not where anyone can see." He carried me through the house to his room, which I'd never seen. Dark wood and clean lines, a massive bed that dominated one wall. He set me down gently, giving me space to change my mind. To run. I didn't run. Hours later, I woke tangled in sheets that smelled like cedar and him, his arm heavy across my waist. Moonlight poured through windows he'd forgotten to cover, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Inevitable. Right. Then my throat went dry. I needed water. Carefully, I extracted myself from his embrace and padded downstairs in his t-shirt, bare feet silent on cold floors. The house slept around me. Security outside, but inside, just silence and shadows. I found the kitchen, poured water, drank it standing at the sink while trying to process everything that had happened. That's when I saw it. Franco's phone, left charging on the counter. The screen lit with a notification, and my eyes caught the preview before I could stop them. "Operation Mousetrap successful. Versiani takes the bait tomorrow." My blood turned to ice. I shouldn't have. Knew I shouldn't have. But my hands moved anyway, unlocking the phone with a swipe. The message thread opened, and I read words that shattered everything. "Target acquired. Subject cruise established as luminary weakness. Versiani surveillance confirms interest. Phase 2. Allow controlled contact. Establish pattern. Phase 3. Deploy subject as bait for ambush." The phone nearly slipped from my hands. I scrolled up, reading more. Dates, times, plans laid out with clinical precision. And there, buried in earlier messages, the truth that made bile rise in my throat. Boss confirms. Veterinarian acceptable collateral for operation. Versiani will move on perceived weakness. I was bait. From the beginning. Raphael had used me as bait to draw out Versiani. Footsteps on the stairs made me spin. Franco stood there, stopping when he saw what I held. His expression shifted from surprise to something like regret. "Dr. Cruz, you weren't supposed to see that." "When?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "When was I going to find out I was the mouse in your trap?" "It's not. Don't." I set the phone down carefully, afraid I'd throw it otherwise. "Where's Raphael?" "Dr. Cruz, if you'll let me explain. Where is Raphael?" He appeared at the top of the stairs then, still shirtless, hair messed from sleep and my hands. He took in the scene immediately. The phone. My expression. Franco's guilty posture. "Valentina," he started. "Tell me it's not true." I backed away as he descended. "Tell me you didn't use me as bait from the first moment." Silence stretched. And in that silence, I had my answer. "It started that way," Raphael said finally. "Franco suggested using you to draw Versiani out, making him think you were my weakness. But Val, that was before... Before what? Before you actually slept with me? Does that make it better?" My voice cracked despite my best efforts. "Everything. Tonight. This afternoon. All of it was part of the plan? No. Last night was real. This afternoon was real." He moved closer, and I retreated until my back hit the counter. "The strategy was real, but everything between us, that's... How am I supposed to believe anything you say?" Tears blurred my vision, and I hated myself for them. "You've been lying to me for 3 days. I haven't lied. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing." I pushed past him, heading for the stairs. For my room. For anywhere that wasn't here. "I'm leaving. First thing tomorrow, I'm gone." "Valentina, please." "Don't." I turned back from halfway up the stairs. "Don't say my name like it means something. Don't pretend tonight mattered. Just don't." I made it to my room before the tears came fully, locked the door, slid down it until I sat on expensive carpet in his too soft shirt, trying to breathe through the betrayal that felt like drowning. I'd been so stupid, so incredibly stupid, falling for a man who'd planned this from the beginning, who'd used me like a piece on a chessboard and made me believe it was something else. Somewhere outside my door, I heard Raphael's voice. Low, urgent, arguing with Franco in Italian, then footsteps retreating, and finally, silence. I didn't sleep that night, just sat there replaying everything, every word, every touch, every moment I'd thought was real, trying to separate truth from manipulation and finding I couldn't tell the difference anymore. By dawn, I'd made my decision. 48 hours were up. It was time to go home. Raphael was waiting outside my door when dawn finally broke. I knew he was there. Had heard him sit down against the wall hours ago, his weight settling with a soft thud that spoke of resignation rather than siege. "Valentina, please, let me explain." I opened the door because staying inside felt like giving him power over me. He looked worse than I felt. Hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, still wearing the same clothes from last night. The sight of him hurt in ways I didn't want to examine. Explain what? That you used me as bait? That every moment between us was calculated? I crossed my arms, armor against the pull I still felt toward him. Save it. It wasn't like that. He stood slowly, and I saw how careful the movement was. His shoulder. The injury I'd treated was bothering him again. Initially, yes. Franco suggested using you to draw Versiani out, making him think you mattered to me. But Valentina, I called it off. Yesterday morning I told Franco to abort the operation. Because you slept with me? Because you do matter. His voice cracked on the words. Because somewhere between suturing my shoulder and defending yourself to armed men in your clinic, you stopped being strategy and became everything. The honesty in his eyes nearly broke me, but I'd believed those eyes last night. Believed his touch, his words, the way he'd held me like I was precious, and it had all been built on a foundation of lies. I'm leaving. Now. Get Franco to drive me or I'll walk down this mountain myself. It's not safe yet. Versiani, I don't care about Versiani. I don't care about your war, or your territory, or your codes of honor. I moved past him toward the stairs. I care about getting back to my actual life before you destroyed it completely. He followed me down, and I could hear Lucia's voice from the kitchen, arguing with Franco in rapid Italian. They both stopped when they saw us. Lucia's expression shifted from surprise to something like pity. "Pack her things," Raphael said quietly to Franco. 3-vehicle convoy. Full security. "We're taking her back to the clinic." "Boss, I don't think—" "Now, Franco." 30 minutes later, I was in the middle SUV again, Thor beside me, watching the mountain property disappear through tinted windows. Raphael sat across from me this time, not beside me. The distance felt like miles instead of feet. I meant what I said last night. He offered after we'd been driving for 20 minutes. About wanting to be selfish. About you making me imagine a different life. "Stop. You deserve to know." I said stop. I looked at him finally. Let him see the hurt I'd been trying to hide. "You don't get to make this harder by being honest now. You had chances. You chose manipulation instead." He flinched like I'd struck him. Good. Let him hurt like I did. The road wound down through forest, early morning mist clinging to trees like ghosts. Franco drove with the same careful precision as always, 2 SUVs flanking us in formation. Everything looked normal, controlled, safe. That's when the world exploded. The lead SUV erupted in flames, a rocket or grenade hitting it with precision that spoke of planning. Professional execution. Franco slammed the brakes, throwing all of us forward. Raphael's arm shot out, catching me before I hit the seat in front of us. "Down!" he commanded, pushing me to the floor. "Stay down!" Gunfire erupted from all sides. Not Verciani's men. The reports were different, heavier. Through the chaos, I heard shouting in Russian. My blood turned to ice. The Bratva, the Russian organization Raphael had mentioned. They'd found us. More explosions. The rear SUV's tires shredded, sending it spinning. Franco tried to maneuver around the burning wreckage of the lead vehicle, but a black cargo van rammed us from the side. The impact threw me against the door despite Raphael trying to shield me. My head cracked against something hard, and stars burst across my vision. "Franco, get us out of here!" Raphael had pulled a gun from somewhere, returning fire through the shattered windows. But there were too many. Professional soldiers in tactical gear poured from vehicles that had appeared from nowhere. They'd planned this, waited for us, known exactly when and where we'd be vulnerable. A canister flew through the broken window. Raphael tried to grab it, throw it back, but it detonated with a sound that was an explosion. Stun grenade. The world turned to white noise and blinding light, my senses completely overwhelmed. Hands grabbed me. Too many hands. I fought, kicking, scratching, but I was disoriented and they were trained. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard Raphael roaring my name, heard the distinctive crack of his gun. Then a heavier impact, bodies struggling. Someone had him, was dragging him back. I caught a glimpse through clearing vision. 3 men subduing Raphael, and he fought like an animal, injured shoulder forgotten, pure desperation in every movement. "Valentina!" A cloth covered my face. Chemical smell, sickeningly sweet. I tried to hold my breath, but panic made me gasp. The world tilted, darkened at the edges. The last thing I saw before consciousness left completely was Raphael breaking free of one captor, blood streaming down his face, reaching for me with desperation written in every line of his body. Then Franco tackled him, holding him back, and I understood why. They were outnumbered, outgunned. If Raphael came after me now, they'd kill him. I wanted to tell him it was okay, that I forgave him, that last night had been real for me too, whatever his original intentions. But darkness swallowed the words before I could form them. I woke in stages. First came the headache, pounding behind my eyes with vicious intensity. Then the cold, seeping through whatever I was lying on. Finally, awareness of my hands bound behind my back, zip ties cutting into my wrists. I opened my eyes to concrete and fluorescent lighting. A warehouse, maybe. Or factory. Something industrial and abandoned. The kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. "She's awake." Accented English. Not Russian. Something else. Italian, maybe. But wrong somehow. Footsteps approached. I forced myself to stillness, to calm, to think like a doctor assessing a patient rather than a hostage facing death. Panic helped nothing. Clinical observation was survival. A man crouched in front of me. Late 30s, expensive suit that didn't match the warehouse setting. Handsome in a cruel way, with dark hair and eyes that held no warmth. Dr. Cruz. Finally we meet properly. I am Adriano Moritoni. He smiled, and it was a predator's expression. Luminari's little weakness. The veterinarian who saved his life and stole his heart. I don't know what you think you know. Please. We've been watching since the night he stumbled into your clinic. Adriano pulled out a phone, showed me photos. Raphael and I in the garden. At dinner last night. Entering his bedroom. My stomach turned. Very touching. Very stupid on his part. What do you want? What I've been hired for. Sergio Verciani pays very well for Luminari's territory. He'll pay even better for Luminari himself. Adriano stood, pacing like he was lecturing. Originally we were just muscle, supporting role. But then you appeared, and suddenly the great Raphael Luminari has something to lose. That changes negotiations considerably. I tested the zip ties. Too tight. My hands were already going numb. He won't trade territory for me. No, but he'll come for you. Tonight. Tomorrow. Soon. And when he does, we'll be ready. Adriano's phone buzzed. He answered in rapid Russian, then switched to Italian, arguing with someone. While he was distracted, I worked on the ties. Veterinary school had taught me knots, taught me how to slip restraints when a panicked animal locked their jaws. This wasn't so different. The plastic cut deeper, blood slicking my wrists. But that actually helped, made my hands slippery. Adriano hung up, turned back to me. Your lover just called. Offered $5 million and half of Portland for your return. Touching, no? $5 million. Half of Portland. Everything Lucia had warned about. Everything Raphael had built over 12 years. And he was willing to burn it all for me. The realization hit harder than any weapon. He meant it. Everything he'd said last night about wanting to be selfish, about choosing me. He meant it. You won't live long enough to spend it, I said quietly. Raphael doesn't negotiate with people who take what's his. But he's already negotiating. Already weak. Adriano checked his watch. He has until midnight. Then I start sending pieces of you back until he agrees to my terms. He walked away, leaving me alone with 2 guards watching from across the warehouse. I kept working the zip tie, ignoring the pain, the blood, the fear trying to claw its way up my throat. My right hand finally slipped through, taking skin with it but coming free. I kept my hands behind my back, hiding what I'd done. Professional soldiers didn't make amateur mistakes. I needed an opening, a distraction, something to give me a chance before midnight came, and Adriano made good on his threat. Somewhere in the mountains, Raphael was planning, gathering his forces, coming for me just like Adriano predicted. And when he did, a lot of people were going to die. I closed my eyes, tried to slow my breathing, to prepare for whatever came next. Because Adriano had made one crucial miscalculation. He thought I was helpless, weak, a damsel waiting for rescue. He'd never considered I might save myself. 8 hours. That's how long I'd been zip-tied in a freezing warehouse with 2 Russian mercenaries watching my every breath. 8 hours of planning, waiting, searching for any opening that might keep me alive until midnight came, and Adriano started making good on his threats. My wrists were raw from working the restraints, blood dried in sticky trails down my palms. But I was free, hands still positioned behind my back like I was bound, waiting for the moment that would never be perfect, but might be good enough. That moment came when Adriano's phone rang. He answered in Russian, his voice rising with each word. An argument. Something had gone wrong with whatever plan he'd orchestrated. He gestured sharply at one of the guards, who moved toward him, leaving only one man watching me from across the warehouse floor. I didn't think. Thinking meant hesitation, and hesitation meant death. I launched myself toward the nearest exit, a loading dock door 20 feet away. My legs burned from hours of sitting, muscles protesting, but adrenaline pushed me forward. "Stop her!" Adriano's shout echoed off concrete walls. Footsteps pounded behind me. Too close, too fast. I wasn't going to make it. My hand reached the door handle when arms wrapped around my waist, yanking me backward. I twisted, driving my elbow into soft tissue. The guard grunted, grip loosening enough for me to break free. Then the warehouse exploded. Not literally, but it might as well have been. The loading dock door I'd been running toward burst inward, metal shrieking as it was torn from its moorings. Men poured through the opening like a flood. Armed, professional, moving with military precision. And leading them, face set in lines of absolute fury, was Raphael. Our eyes met across the chaos. Time seemed to slow. I saw everything in crystalline detail. The blood matting his dark hair, the fresh bruising on his jaw, the way his injured shoulder was taped beneath tactical gear. He'd come straight from the ambush site. Hadn't stopped to treat injuries. Hadn't waited for anything except gathering enough firepower to burn this place to the ground. "Down!" His voice cut through the noise, and I dropped instinctively. Gunfire erupted. Raphael's men moved with coordinated efficiency. Each shot precise, each movement calculated. They'd done this before. Many times. This wasn't rescue. This was war. Adriano grabbed me from behind, using me as a shield. His gun pressed cold against my temple. "Luminari! One more step and she dies." Raphael froze. His men froze. For a heartbeat, the entire warehouse held its breath. "Let her go, Moritoni." Raphael's voice was empty of emotion. Flat. Final. The same tone he'd used when ordering Giovanni's execution. "This ends one of two ways. You die quick, or you die slow. Choose." I choose option 3. I walk out with the girl, you let me leave, and nobody else bleeds tonight. Adriano's breath was hot against my ear, reeking of cigarettes and fear. "You want her alive? Back off." Raphael's eyes met mine over the distance. In them, I saw calculation. Strategy. The mob boss weighing options, measuring outcomes. But I also saw something else. Rage. Pure and volcanic. Barely contained beneath that icy control. I made my choice. Dropped my full weight suddenly, becoming dead weight in Adriano's arms. His grip shifted, the gun moving away from my temple for just a second. Just long enough. Raphael's shot was perfect. It caught Adriano in the shoulder, spinning him. I rolled away as Franco and 2 others converged, weapons trained. But Adriano wasn't done. He pulled something from his jacket. Not a gun. A trigger. "Building's wired!" he gasped through pain. "I drop this. Everyone dies." Raphael moved toward him slowly, gun never wavering. "Then don't drop it. Verziani warned me you were crazy. Said you'd burn your whole empire for one woman." Adriano's laugh was wet, pained. Didn't believe him until now. "Your mistake." Raphael was close now. Too close. Within Adriano's reach if he wanted to grab him. "Valentina, walk to Franco." Slowly. I stood on shaking legs, started moving. Each step felt like miles, like walking through quicksand. Adriano's eyes tracked me, calculating whether I was worth dying for. "Luminari!" someone shouted from the entrance. "Fire! Southeast corner!" Smoke began curling from the back of the warehouse. Not from Adriano's trigger. Something else. Either his men setting a diversion, or Raphael's crew creating chaos. Didn't matter. The building was going up. Adriano's attention split for just a second. Raphael moved. Faster than someone injured should move, than someone should be able to move. He closed the distance, knocked the trigger from Adriano's hand, caught it before it hit concrete, then put 3 bullets center mass before Adriano could react. The body dropped. Raphael pocketed the trigger, turned to his men. Everyone out, now. But the fire had spread faster than possible. Accelerant, probably. The southeast corner was fully engulfed, flames racing up walls toward the roof. Smoke filled the space, thick and choking. I couldn't see the exit anymore. Couldn't see anything except orange glow and shadows. Arms wrapped around me from behind. "Raphael, hold your breath. Stay close." He pulled me through the inferno, one arm around my waist, the other still holding his weapon. Heat seared my skin. Smoke clawed at my lungs despite trying not to breathe. The world narrowed to his heartbeat against my back, and the certainty of his grip. We burst through the loading dock into cold night air. I gasped, coughed, gasped again. Raphael didn't stop moving, dragged me another 50 feet before the warehouse exploded behind us, Adriano's rigged charges finally detonating. The blast wave threw us forward. Raphael twisted mid-fall, taking the impact on his back, cradling my head against his chest. We hit concrete hard enough to knock the wind from both of us. For a moment, neither of us moved, just lay there breathing, alive. Miraculously, impossibly alive. You okay? Raphael's voice was rough, strained. I think so. You? I'll live. He sat up slowly, wincing. Fresh blood soaked through his tactical vest. The shoulder wound had reopened. Again. Christ, Valentina, when I saw them take you. I know. I pressed my hand over the bleeding. I know. We need to get you medical attention. We need to get you away from here. He stood, pulling me up with him. Franco was there suddenly, supporting Raphael's other side. Boss, we need to move. Police will be here soon. 2 SUVs waited in the access road. I was pushed into one, Raphael following despite Franco trying to get him into the other vehicle. I'm not letting her out of my sight, he said, voice brooking no argument. We drove fast, lights off, through back roads I didn't recognize. Raphael's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezed once. I called it off, the operation, yesterday morning. Told Franco you weren't bait anymore. I know, he told me. After, I looked at him in the dim light from the dashboard. You offered them everything, half of Portland, $5 million. Would have offered more. Would have given them the whole territory if they'd asked. His thumb traced circles on my palm. I meant what I said. About wanting to be selfish. About choosing you, even after I said I was leaving. Especially then. He leaned his head back against the seat, exhaustion finally catching up. You had every right to go. Still do. But I needed you to know the truth first. That whatever started as strategy became real somewhere along the way. The SUV pulled into what looked like a private medical facility. Clean, modern, discreet. The kind of place that didn't ask questions about gunshot wounds. Franco had called ahead. Doctors were waiting. They tried to separate us for treatment. Raphael refused. Same room. I'm not arguing about this. So they set up 2 exam tables side by side. My injuries were minor. Rope burns, bruising, mild smoke inhalation. Raphael's were worse. The shoulder wound needed restitching. Again. Plus new injuries from the rescue. Cracked ribs from the explosion. 2nd-degree burns on his hands. He didn't make a sound as they worked. Just watched me being treated on the table next to him, like he needed visual confirmation I was really there. Really safe. Versiani is dead, Franco said quietly from the doorway once the doctors had finished. Happened during the rescue. Lucia led the operation personally. Raphael's eyes closed briefly. Casualties? 3 wounded, none killed. Versiani had 8 men. None survived. Franco's tone was flat, reporting facts. It's over, boss. The war. Finished. Over. The word hung in the antiseptic air. 3 weeks of violence. Dead men. Burned buildings. And it was over because Raphael had divided his forces, risked everything, to save me while his sister dealt the killing blow elsewhere. Franco left us alone. The medical staff retreated, giving us privacy. Raphael shifted on his exam table until he could reach across the gap between us. His hand found mine again, holding tight. What happens now? I asked quietly. That depends on you. He turned his head to look at me, and despite everything, despite the exhaustion and pain and blood, his eyes were clear, honest. I can set you up anywhere. New identity, money, protection. You can disappear. Live the quiet life you built before I crashed into it. And if I don't want that, then I spend however long you'll give me proving that last night wasn't manipulation. That the man who made you breakfast and showed you his library and kissed you like he was drowning, that was real. All of it. I studied his face. the bruises forming, the cut above his eyebrow, the gray pallor of someone who'd pushed past exhaustion into pure willpower. He'd torn through a warehouse full of armed mercenaries for me, had offered his enemies everything he'd built, had been willing to die in that burning building as long as I got out. "I have conditions," I said finally. Something like hope flickered in his expression. "Name them. No more using me as strategy without telling me. I'm a partner or nothing." "Agreed. I keep my clinic. My life. I'm not some trophy in a gilded cage. Never wanted that. Want you exactly as you are. And when we have kids..." I paused, realizing what I'd said. Not if. When. They don't enter the family business. They get choice. Real choice. Raphael's hand tightened on mine. "I'm working on an exit plan. 5 years, maybe less. Lucia takes over operations. I step back. We build something different. You'd really do that?" "For you, I'd do anything." He said it simply. Statement of fact. "But Valentina, you need to understand what staying means. There will always be enemies. Always be risk. Always be looking over shoulders. That life, it doesn't just disappear. I know. And I did. Had seen it. Lived it. Understood the weight of it. But I also know that Thor was right about you from the first moment. That somewhere between suturing your shoulder and burning buildings, I fell for a man who's trying to be better than his circumstances. And I want to see where that goes." Raphael pulled me toward him awkwardly across the gap between tables. His kiss was gentle despite everything we'd survived. A promise. A beginning. "No regrets?" He whispered against my lips. "Not even one." Outside, dawn was breaking. Inside, 2 people who'd found each other in blood and chaos began figuring out how to build something real from the wreckage. 2 weeks, 14 days since Raphael had torn through a burning warehouse to save me, since I'd watched him offer everything he'd built for my life, since I'd chosen to stay despite knowing exactly what that meant. The clinic felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just grown used to palatial mountain estates, with views that stretched for miles. Camilla kept shooting me worried glances as I examined Mrs. Patterson's tabby, checking the healing from his dental surgery. "You're different," she said finally, after our last patient left. "Whatever happened while you were gone, it changed you." I set down my stethoscope, considered lying. Decided she deserved better. I fell in love with someone complicated, someone dangerous. And I'm still figuring out if that makes me brave or stupid. Can it be both? She leaned against the exam table. "Gabby told me about the men in suits. The security detail. Val, if you're in trouble..." "I'm not. Not anymore. The war was over. Versiani dead. The Bratva dealt with. Raphael's territory secured and expanded. All because he'd been willing to burn it down for me. I'm just deciding what comes next." What came next arrived 20 minutes later in a black sedan that was understated compared to the SUVs I'd grown accustomed to. Raphael stepped out, and my breath caught, despite having seen him just yesterday. He wore dark jeans and a leather jacket, casual by his standards. But he still moved like he owned every space he entered. Camilla's eyes went wide. "Is that the cousin?" "That's Raphael. And no, he's not my cousin." "Holy hell, Val. You could have led with that." Raphael entered, and Thor bounded over immediately, tail wagging like they were old friends. Which, I supposed, they were. Raphael scratched behind the dog's ears with easy affection before his eyes found mine. "Can we talk?" Camilla made herself scarce with impressive speed. Raphael waited until we were alone before pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Legal documents. My name on every page. The clinic is yours, free and clear. I paid off the mortgage this morning." He set another document on the counter. "And this is a trust fund, 500,000, managed by an independent firm, no strings attached." My throat went tight. "Raphael, let me finish." He moved closer but didn't touch me, giving me space, respecting boundaries even now. "You need to be able to choose freely. Stay with me because you want to, not because you're trapped or dependent. So these are yours, whether you decide to stay or go." I picked up the documents with shaking hands. He'd given me an escape route. Complete freedom. The ability to disappear anywhere in the world and build a new life without looking back. Why? I whispered. Because you deserve choice. Real choice. His eyes held mine, vulnerable in ways I'd never seen. Because I love you, Valentina. Not the idea of you, not what you represent. You. The stubborn veterinarian who sutures bullet wounds and yells at crime lords and makes terrible coffee. A laugh escaped me, halfway to a sob. My coffee isn't that bad. It's awful. He smiled, that real smile that transformed everything. But I'd drink it every morning for the rest of my life if you'd let me. I set down the papers, moved into his space. His arms came around me immediately, holding tight. Safe. Home. I have conditions. Of course you do. His breath stirred my hair. Name them. No more secrets. If there's danger, you tell me. If there's strategy, you include me. Partnership or nothing. Done. I keep the clinic. Keep my life. I'm not abandoning everything I built. Never wanted you to. Want you exactly as you are. And kids. I pulled back to look at him. When we have them, they get normal. School plays and soccer games and boring suburban existence. No legacy, no empire, no choosing between family and law. I'm transitioning everything to Lucia over the next 4 years. By the time we're ready for children, I'll be retired from operations. His hand came up to cup my face. We'll be boring together. You could never be boring. Watch me try. He leaned his forehead against mine. So? What's your answer? Instead of speaking, I kissed him. Slow and deep and full of promise. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I pulled back just enough to see his face. I choose you. Eyes wide open. No illusions. Choosing this life, this risk, this beautiful disaster of ours. No regrets. Ask me again in 50 years. Deal. He kissed me again. And this time it felt like beginning something, rather than ending it. 6 months later, I stood in Raphael's dining room, watching the organized chaos of family dinner. Lucia argued politics with Roberto, while Franco carefully avoided taking sides. Adriano's replacement, a quiet man named Paolo, listened more than he spoke. Gabi had been invited and was charming everyone with surgical precision. Thor slept under the table, occasionally receiving treats from Raphael when he thought I wasn't looking. You're staring, Raphael murmured in my ear, arms sliding around my waist from behind. I'm appreciating. There's a difference. Appreciating what? This. You. The fact that we made it here. I turned in his arms, let him see the emotion I'd stopped hiding. 6 months ago, I was alone except for animals. Now I have this strange, wonderful, slightly criminal family that somehow became mine. Slightly criminal. Lucia raised her wine glass from across the room. I'm a licensed attorney. Thank you very much. Who represents exclusively criminal clients? I shot back, grinning. She laughed, and the sound filled the space with warmth. Raphael's hand found mine, fingers lacing together with the easy familiarity of habit. 6 months. Long enough to know this was real. Short enough that I still caught myself marveling at it. Everyone. Raphael clinked his glass, waiting for silence. When he had attention, his arm tightened around my waist. Valentina and I have an announcement. I showed them the ring. Simple platinum band with a single diamond. Nothing ostentatious. Just perfect. Lucia squealed. Actually squealed. Franco smiled, genuine and warm. Gabby's eyes filled with happy tears, and the rest of the table erupted in congratulations. Took you long enough, Lucia said, hugging me tight. I've had the date circled in my calendar for months. Presumptuous much? Informed. There's a difference. She pulled back, studied me seriously. You're sure? About all of this? Completely. And I was. Knew exactly what I was choosing. The danger that might never fully disappear. The looking over shoulders. The complicated legacy. But also the man who'd covered my body with his own to take bullets. Who'd offered me freedom even when he wanted me to stay. Who made terrible jokes and perfect eggs, and loved me with an intensity that should have been terrifying but just felt right. Dinner continued with planning and toasting and laughter. Later, after everyone had left and the house settled into quiet, Raphael found me on the terrace overlooking the valley. The same place we'd had dinner months ago, before everything exploded and reformed into this. "Cold?" he asked, draping his jacket over my shoulders. "A little." I leaned back against his chest, his arms coming around me. "Thank you. For the jacket? For giving me choice. For letting me choose this rather than forcing it. Always." He kissed the top of my head. "Though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't terrified you'd choose to leave. Never crossed my mind. Well, maybe once. For like 5 minutes. But Thor wouldn't have forgiven me." "Just Thor?" I turned to look up at him, letting him see the truth in my eyes. "I wouldn't have forgiven myself. You're it for me, Raphael Luminari. The complicated, dangerous, surprisingly domestic love of my life. That might be the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Then you've been spending time with the wrong people." "Not anymore." He kissed me, slow and thorough, tasting like wine and promise. "Ready for bed?" "In a minute. Want to stay here a bit longer." So we did. Stood wrapped in each other while stars appeared overhead and the mountain air turned cold. Two people who'd found each other through blood and chaos, building something real from impossible circumstances. "Valentina?" Raphael's voice was soft against my hair. Thank you for opening your door that night, for choosing to save a bleeding stranger instead of the safer option." I thought about that night. The storm, the pounding on my door, the decision that had changed everything. "You're welcome. But Raphael?" "Yeah, thank you for being worth saving." We stood there in comfortable silence, and I realized this was it. The happy ending that wasn't really an ending at all. Just another beginning. Messy, complicated, dangerous, and absolutely ours. Some fairy tales start with once upon a time. Ours started with blood and thunder, and a woman stupid enough to open her door to danger. And maybe that made it better. Real. Earned rather than given. Either way, I wouldn't change a single moment.